Hey guys, I hope everyone is doing good this week. I hope you guys all had a great week and are ready to do some reading. I'm I don't know, I'm in a weird mood today. I don't know what it is. Actually, I do know what it is. And so my birthday's tomorrow, and it should be a happy thing, should be an exciting thing, and it's one of those milestone birthdays. You know, the ones that you really either look forward to or dread getting to. And this one is a big one. And as I head into it, I keep looking back and going, I am not where I hope to be at this point. So there's something's got to change. I got to figure out how to get back on track. And I don't know, just it's really highlighting it for me. And so I don't want to celebrate. I don't want to do anything. I just kind of want to get through it. But I keep getting reminded, oh, it's your birthday. Happy birthday. I'm like, yay, thank you. It's my birthday. I'll get out of my own headspace. I don't need to burden you guys with my stress. We are here to read a story and entertain ourselves, right? Yes. So that is exactly what we're going to do. We are on chapter 7 this week. Remember, it is a Taste of Your Own Magic. Book 2 in the Agents of A.S.S.E.T series. Remember, that is a 4-book series. So we are only at book 2. There are 4 currently published, with 1 coming out when I finish it. I'm trying. I promise I'm trying. I think that's part of my funk. I haven't been in a creative headspace for a while, and I do tend to get in a funky mood when I don't have the ability to create. So I do need to get back to that, but work has had me so overloaded. But again, you're not here to hear about my problems. You're here to read a story. So let's jump on in it. Chapter 7. Having missed lunch, both of them were eager to grab a quick meal before heading back to A.S.S.E.T. Gray pulled his bike into the parking lot of a bar, boasting the best burgers in the city. Some siren he is, Gray chuckled to himself as he pulled off his helmet. He lost a pair of Gemini in the space of a week. Gemini twins? Sage asked, not entirely sure what that meant. She had so much to learn about the magical realm. Gray's eyes twinkled at the mention of them. They have their talents. His lips kinked crookedly. It might have been a smile, but it didn't look right on his face. Let's just say they are perfectly suited to being a magician's assistant. More than enough of a clue to their nature, Sage didn't feel the need to delve further into their special talents. But she wondered if Marin, sleazy as he was, had not been the target. Perhaps the twins were in some trouble of their own, and it was only coincidence that they worked for a man whose middle name was dead. What would make 2 people just disappear without a trace? Sage mumbled to herself. She didn't think Marin's sleazy siren abilities had scared them off. I'd be interested to see if others are missing that we haven't learned of yet. She pulled off the helmet and tied her hair into a messy bun. You're already jumping to conspiracy theories? Slow your roll there, rookie. It's only your first assignment. Ava isn't going to give us something that complicated yet. He looked far too amused for her liking. As Gray swapped the bike helmet for the stupid fedora, she had to force herself to resist the urge to knock it off his head. Really? Because my last unofficial assignment was such a walk in the park. Trial by fire is not always a bad thing. But I doubt it's that serious. We live in one of the most transient cities in America. He shrugged and turned towards the front door of the bar. I hope the burgers here are as good as they say. Sage's stomach growled at the mention of food. The smell of cooking beef hung heavy in the early evening air. They don't have to be good. I'm starving. She followed Gray to the front door. And we'll pull up the Gemini's file when we get back. But don't get your hopes up. The twins aren't very important people. We might not have much to work from. Wow, I'm just stumbling a lot today, aren't I? His bedside manner left a lot to be desired. Gray could have at least sounded somewhat bothered by 2 women vanishing. It didn't need to be ranked in importance or by how powerful they were. They're missing. That's pretty important. Yes, Bleeding Heart, all people are important. But as far as our filing system goes, if they don't have a criminal record, we might not have more than names and addresses to work from. But you have other resources, don't you? Sage looked up, noticing that the sun had already set. Somehow, day had passed them by without her realizing it. Night had taken on a whole new meaning since learning the supernatural realm. The weight of unseen eyes fell on her back, and Sage increased her pace as she followed Gray into the bar. What about that staffing agency? You're learning, young one, Gray teased. We'll make an appointment there soon. Right now, why they disappeared is a bit more interesting to me. And sometimes that information can't be found in a database. If there's any others who've gone missing recently, that could give us a connection. I don't like this, Sage protested. Gray didn't have a network of informants. He had one. One she knew, excuse me, and she never knew how to read that specific one. Equal parts smooth-talking charmer and viper ready to strike, Zack had a reputation that gave people a false sense of security. Toothless for a vampire, he'd bleed your wallet dry before your neck. A cunning facade, but she'd seen his true nature and how deadly he could be if he wanted. Are you going to complain about every time we take a mission that requires a little street savoir-faire? Gray turned before reaching the door, his turquoise eyes daring her to admit defeat. Are we always going to have to involve the vampires? She countered defiantly, meeting his gaze. Like it or not, she had to go along with Gray's plan. He was her partner. They have a finger on the pulse of what's going on. Gray held the door open for her, and we use our resources. They use us just as much. Everything came with a price of some kind, and the vampire that he had in mind freely admitted that his services required payment. "Aw, are you afraid of the big bad vampire?" Gray taunted her. If she answered truthfully, he'd never let her hear the end of it. Vampires were the one creature whose cursed magic could affect the Terra. Whatever, let's just get this over with. Gray walked towards an open booth. Is this public enough for you? Do you feel safe? Sage gave the small room a once-over, counting the patrons on one hand. Hardly. You're just a ray of sunshine tonight. Gray slid into the booth. Not bright enough to harm me. Zack appeared so suddenly, as if he had materialized into existence. But Sage knew better. She'd be willing to bet he'd been lying in wait for them to show up just to enjoy the shock on her face when he made his entrance. He scooted, uninvited, onto the bench next to Sage. Instinctively, she moved over, pressing herself against the wall. Now she was trapped between a table and a vampire. Why couldn't he have sat with Gray? Words she couldn't give voice to, but both men appeared to be amused by her annoyance. If fear truly had a smell, no doubt both guys had picked up on her own personal brand of ode scared to hell. Evening, killer, Zack chuckled at his own joke. No one ever forgets that first taste of blood. You don't have to be a vampire to savor it, you know. He winked and turned to Gray. You remember your first, right? We're here on business tonight, Gray replied. Always business with you lot. Don't you ever just want to chat? Zack's feigned sadness didn't elicit a response from Gray. When he turned on Sage with those icy blue eyes, she remembered his dual nature. She'd seen the viper in him, quick to strike with teeth like needles. But there was a person behind the monster, one she'd had more than a few fun conversations with. It didn't change her feelings towards his kind or remove her apprehension that she felt in his presence, but there was no reason to fear him at the moment. What are we going to chat about then? Sage volleyed the words back to Zack. Well, nothing now, if you're going to take that attitude about it. Zack responded with the snark of a teenage girl. Sage found it hard to hide her amusement. Don't play into his ego. Gray pretended to look over the menu, but Sage knew food had been nothing more than a tease. This meeting had been planned. At least she had the sense to act as if I'm a real person, not some information console. Zack played the drama queen to near perfection. Insert a coin and pop out a fortune cookie with answers. If only it was that easy. Gray looked up from his menu with a devious glint in his eyes. Where do I swipe my credit card? That Gray. Zack turned back towards Sage with a wink. He likes to fuss. The way to her heart was always through nerd speak, and Zack was more than fluent in that language. His careful use of it spoke volumes, easing her apprehension at being around him. Fuss. She let the word hang on the air for a second, struggling to remember the line. Fuss. I think he likes to scream at us, she giggled. He really doesn't mean any harm, Zack replied instantly. But he is seriously lacking on, Sage snorted before she could finish her sentence, charm. Gray didn't appear to recognize the movie that they were quoting, which made the moment that much more satisfying. You have a gift for rhyme, Zack waggled his eyebrows. Yes, some of the time. Sage stuck her tongue out at him. I think we're starting to make Gray nervous. Zack waved his hand in the air as if to say he was done. Besides, I'm much more interested in hearing how you, Sage, are doing. Don't, she warned, not wanting to revisit the memory. Joking aside, I'm truly concerned. An innocent like yourself has to be feeling something after that whole mess at Devon's. I'd prefer not to discuss, Sage replied, more sternly this time, hoping that he'd get the message and return to quoting Princess Bride. As you wish, Zack winked. Funny how 3 little words could have such an impact on her mood. Gray didn't understand, of course, but Sage allowed the smile to return to her lips. If you truly wish to be a friend and not simply some information vending machine, as you so oddly put it, then let's talk about what's happening on the streets, Sage countered. Zack turned to Gray. Nicely played. You see what she did there? You could learn a thing from her. Sweet talk me with movie quotes, and once she's reeled me in... Do I look like the sweet-talking kind? Gray stared across the table, delivering the words deadpan. And you wonder why I demand money from him, Zack shrugged. The streets are vast. What specifically are you looking to learn? Supernaturals? Disappearing without a trace? Ring any bells? Gray asked before Sage could open her mouth. Just can't get a day off from all that doom and gloom in this world, can we? Zack scoffed. Comes with a job. Or so I'm learning. Sage picked up the menu from the edge of the table and began looking it over. Gray might have forgotten the promise of food, but her stomach would not allow that to be broken. Well, when you seek trouble, Zack let his words hang in the air. Trouble seeks us, Sage sighed. I haven't heard of any contracts. Are we talking vanished as in wiped from the earth, or dead bodies popping up? Zack asked as casually as if you were asking if she was planning to order fries. No bodies yet, Gray answered. Talk of death and bodies silenced the growling of her stomach. Tempting as the smell of bacon and cooking beef had been, the conversation at her table was seriously ruining it. What about talismans? Zack asked curiously. Well, that's oddly specific, Sage noted loudly as she slammed her menu down. Zack shook his head. Just an observation. People, especially magical ones, don't just poof out of existence. Their magic goes somewhere, like with you. When your mother died, her magical lineage passed to you. Blood magic passes to the next in line. These were not heritage-bound, Gray said. Was anything left behind by the victims? Their vehicles, Sage replied. I was talking about pieces of them. Oh, like body parts? Sage asked, grimacing, her appetite completely ruined by the thought of severed limbs. No, physical representations of what they were. If magic was absorbed, something's left behind. Someone is killed, then there's a body. Have you found either? Zack asked. Sage thought back to the office. It had been a mess of costumes and bills, but she couldn't remember seeing any trophies or tchotchkes. What you're suggesting would take very powerful magic. Few registered in this city can wield that kind of power. Gray's expression darkened as if he already knew what he'd have to do next. Sage was clueless. She'd only scratched the surface to this new to her realm, and beyond the very basics of magical classes, she knew nothing about the range of abilities someone could possess. As much as she wanted to open her mouth and ask for clarification, she hesitated, knowing that it would only earn her more mockery for being a noob. Just an observation, and hopefully one that does not prove to be true, Zack said with a note of caution. I think you're onto something, though, Gray nodded. His expression shifted between a pained look that said he was thinking and the wide eyes of an epiphany. We need to head back to the office and check some records. Oh, but you've only just arrived. You can't leave me so soon. I thought we'd have dinner. Zack licked his lips for effects, causing a shiver to race down Sage's spine. If her appetite hadn't already been ruined, that would have surely killed it. And with that one move, he'd negated all the goodwill his nerd speak had earned. All work and no play. She nudged him to move out of her way so she could escape. Makes Gray a dull boy. Zack finished this sentence with a chuckle. But what will it do for fresh-faced Sage? You're teetering on the edge of super creepy right now. Stop while you're ahead, she warned, and as she exited the booth. As you wish. Zack bowed with a flourish. Have fun storming the castle. I'm guessing you've got an idea of what we're looking for now? Sage asked, following behind her partner, happy to be free of Zack, though her stomach did growl in protest. Ideas? Yes. I'm not sure yet, but Zack's right about magic leaving a trace. If their magic was absorbed, there should be something left behind. Otherwise, we're going to be looking for bodies. You still think it's someone targeting Marin for debts? Sage asked. No, they'd hurt him, not innocent assistants. So you think Zack's right and someone is stealing magic? That's what doesn't make sense. Why steal low-level magic? Practice? Sage said more to herself than in answer to Gray's question. But rather than admonish her for such a silly suggestion, his eyes grew even wider. Testing. Testing out new abilities. Or maybe someone new to the area who's testing out our defenses. Possible. What kind of being has the ability to steal magic? Sage asked. But Gray didn't answer. He looked as if he were rolling that same question around his mind. He tossed her the helmet and mounted his bike. Come on, I'll take you home. It's too late tonight for the amount of research we're going to have to do. Chapter 8. Gray stopped the bike just outside the night gate at Sage's apartment complex. We start at 8 tomorrow. You picking me up again? She asked. The day had worn her thin and sleep was calling. Let's not make a habit of this, he nodded. I'll message you when I head out. Gray sped away before she could get another word. The transportation situation was going to become an issue soon, but it ranked low on her immediate needs at the moment. Sage dragged herself in through the night gate and headed towards her apartment. Hello, neighbor, Luke called from his balcony. Sage looked up and waved politely. Want to stop in for a beer? He asked. A hopeful edge to his tone threw her for a moment. Didn't he say he had a girlfriend? That was bad news right there, if he did. No, thanks. Been a long day, she said, trying to keep her tone friendly. Whether he was well-intentioned or not, he was a Djinn, and their reputation demanded she take special care to keep him at arm's length. No bringing business home. Rain check? Luke asked. Yeah, sure. Sage quickened her pace, making a beeline for her front door. Late night at the office? Matt's tone had held more concern than curiosity. She checked the locks and peeked through the peephole, half wondering to see if Luke was still out there, watching her front door. And as the thought struck her, so too did the realization she was making herself paranoid without reason. Just because someone is a being of magic, that didn't make them evil. Then again, Devon had called them big baddies. You okay? Matt's concern amplified, but he hadn't stood from his comfortable position on the couch. Did you sign on the dotted line? Yep. I'm official now, she feigned to cheer. It's been a long day, and my head's killing me. The rich aroma of espresso roast tempted her with the promise of renewed energy. She set her bag down on the table and walked over to pour herself a cup. Apparently, both come with the territory. Steaming cup in hand, she strolled to the living room. Josh and Matt had claimed every inch of the couch, stretching out across all three cushions, leaving only the used and busted old recliner for her to use. Please tell me they're paying you well, Josh said. Mr. Practical. It was a damn good thing, too, because between the three of them, someone needed to have a responsible head on their shoulders. Left to their own devices, she and Matt would have the apartment filled top to bottom with movie collections, collectibles, and games. Sage shrugged. Well enough, I guess, but I have to buy a car soon. Got lots of driving to do. Healthcare, dental, he continued his interrogation. Oh, she could have used his sleuthing skills earlier with Marin the Magnificent. Josh might have gotten more information out of him than Sage. She chuckled to herself at the thought as Josh droned on and on. Matt told me how dangerous your new work is. Private investigations with an emphasis on weird. He spoke with parental authority, clearly fishing for more information that had nothing to do with her vision care or 401k. Sage wondered just how much Matt had told him. Josh and Matt were human, which fell under the do not tell category of asset regulations. But more than that, they were partners, and Sage counted on them as close as family. With Matt already knowing how long would it be before Josh figured things out? Beyond that, how fair was it for her to ask Matt to keep something so important and secret from his partner? A.S.S.E.T takes care of its people. You don't have to worry for me. Sage sipped her coffee as an excuse to stop talking. Matt's eyes darted back and forth between his boyfriend and Sage. Don't. Just don't. Sage wished she could use the force and stop her roommate from nervously chewing his bottom lip off. She'd seen that look before. Matt was practically bursting to speak, but the effort it took him to bottle it up made him act like a toddler on a sugar high. Worriers, the pair of them. Not that Sage could blame either of the guys, but knowing such crazy secrets wouldn't remove any of their concern. So I was thinking about game night. She shifted gears, hoping the boys would keep pace. We need to get back to the dragon raids. Why not try a new map? Get a change of pace. I'm not sure we should change maps yet. Josh turned his puppy dog eyes on Matt. We haven't beaten the last one we played. You're probably right, Matt agreed. Sage needs to recalibrate her character sheet anyways. Miss Magical Immunity, that's not fair. To whom? She stuck her tongue out, refusing to be baited into that conversation again. To the rest of us who build our characters by the book? Josh narrowed his eyes, clearly still angry for her ruining the last game. What if the rulebook got it wrong? She looked away, squirming uncomfortably in her seat. Damn it. Even with the change in topic, she still couldn't escape talking about magical mumbo-jumbo for one night. It's an unpublished game after all. Why not act like real beta testers and provide notes on how to create better characters? You can't twink a character just to win a game. Matt jumped in before Josh could. I wouldn't call what I did winning. She turned away, but she could feel his accusing eyes boring into her skull. Magic neutrality is not a twink, it's an ability. I could still get my head chopped off by a damage dealer. She added stubbornly. You're not ruining game night with your newfound love of magical protection. Matt put his foot down hard. Sir, yes, sir, she replied with a one-fingered salute. He was about to explode with the truth, and she knew it. You two have some secret you're not sharing with me. Josh's tone shifted from suspicion to confusion. She had to perform damage control before tempers flared. Matt had said he would make her tell Josh, but so soon? Had he been spooked by something while she was at work? Luke, their super friendly Djinn neighbor, had he come over and said something he shouldn't have? Luke had recognized her mark immediately. What if he'd assumed? Sage realized both Josh and Matt were staring at her, waiting for an answer that apparently she was expected to give. Anticipation weighed thickly in the air during the awkward pause, holding the whole room in silence. Well, we are madly in love. Sage forced herself to giggle as girlishly as she could for effect, but that's no secret. And planning to run off to Tahiti, Matt picked up on her lead, always on his game. But other than that, no. He gave Josh a little peck on the cheek. Josh rolled his eyes. If you're taking off, please use my member number so I can at least get the airline miles. Oh, well, how else am I going to get the upgrade to first class? Sage batted her eyes coquettishly at him. Really, though, what's going on between you two? He might have kept his tone level, but the insistence was there. You two are acting weird, and that's saying something. Despite Sage's efforts to derail the conversation, Josh's train of thought arrived right on schedule. Sage's new job bothers me, that's all, Matt replied flippantly. She's basically family. You helped me make the decision to take the damn job, Sage fired back. Don't get mad at me for listening to you. The one time you listen, Matt scoffed. Don't pull that crap on me. She whipped an accusing finger at him. How dare he sit there with a chip on his shoulder when they'd come to an agreement the previous evening? You could have put up a better defense before I accepted the offer. I said my piece. You already had your mind made up. And we all know how defiant you are, Sage. If I told you no and put my foot down, you'd have just laughed and done it anyway. Are we all taking crazy pills here? Because what you just said makes no flippin' sense. If she had known this was... I can talk. I can do that. If she had known this was what she'd be coming home to, she'd have opted to stay in housing. She'd opted to stay in housing at A.S.S.E.T. Really, I can read. I promise. I swear I can. After the day she'd had, Sage didn't have it in her to go toe-to-toe with both boys over her new job. Since Matt won't say, and it's clearly bothering him more than he wants, what exactly do you do at work, Sage? Josh speared her with a look that dared her to try and derail the conversation again. Matt might have been huffing and puffing, but his boyfriend's calm voice commanded so much more authority. First official day as an agent, she hadn't even been given time to digest the full meaning of this new way of life, and here she was being drilled by the dramatic duo. Let me ask you this. Sage threw out a softball question to gauge his open-mindedness. Do you believe in magic? You mean the shows on the strip? Josh replied. Oh, I love the guys who had the tigers. That was an awesome show back in the day. No, I mean people who are born with gifts and abilities, Sage said. Are you going X-Men on me now? He chuckled, sounding more nervous than amused. Matt picked at his nails. The effort it was taking for him not to blurt out the truth had him chewing his perfect manicure down to the quick. As annoyed as she was, part of her understood. Keeping secrets was hard enough. Keeping the fact that your roommate was on the magical police force was damn near impossible. Less comic book, more fantasy, Sage hoped, that delving in with a lighter tone might make things easier. Oh, so witches? Josh asked. We talking Salem trials here? Sort of, but real abilities. And they don't need spells to make things happen. They can just do it. Like, poof, they make what they want appear? Josh snapped his fingers. Right. Sage nodded and pointed a finger at the coffee table. You think beer, and bam, there's a beer right in front of you. Well, that would be awesome. It would save me so much on grocery bills. Josh snuggled back into the arms of the couch cushion and reached a hand out to stop Matt from chewing off his pinky nail. You find people like that? It's one way to put it, Matt mumbled. Okay, sure. Let's say I believe in magic and it could be real, Josh replied. Where do I sign up? Don't jump into the deep end yet, Sage cautioned. Magic is real, and it can do cool things, but it can also do bad things too. You're being totally serious, aren't you? The corner of Josh's lip twitched. His jaw tightened as if struggling to maintain the neutral expression that he'd had at the moment. Believe it. Matt nudged Josh with his elbow. She's not lying. They exchanged silent grimaces before Josh's attention fell back to Sage. Fine. Magic's real and both good and evil. Okay. Now, let's say that there were people out there who were innately neutral to magic, whether good or evil. She softened her tone, hoping to ease the sting of truth. You? Josh jumped straight to the point. That's what you two were arguing about, not the game? I thought we were arguing over the game, but clearly Matt had more on his mind than he was willing to say. Sage held out an arm, showing off her birthmark, the Tree of Life. This isn't just some deformity, your birthmark. It's a special branding. All of the people who were born magically neutral have it, and we're capable of withstanding pretty much all the magic that can be thrown at us. And because of that, we're called to be its protectors. Wait, hold on, 1 second. Josh held his hand up like a schoolboy desperate to get attention. So you're not magic, you just can't be hurt by it? He'd seen her birthmark many times in the past, and like everyone else, he'd asked about it, thinking it was a really bad tattoo, and dismissed it just as quickly. But as she held it up for him to see, revealing how much it had changed since her awakening, his eyes glistened with new appreciation. He leaned in for a closer look. His hands trembled as he reached out to touch the more defined lines of the Tree of Life. What had once looked like haphazard tangle of broken veins had morphed into twisted Celtic-like knots that very clearly shaped into a tree. His finger, ever so slightly, traced the outline from the roots all the way up to the trunk, to the leaves dotting the top of the canopy. Okay, even I have to admit your birthmark's changed. A lot. It has. And that's part of why Matt's so upset. Sage sighed as she met her roommate's eyes. See, When Mom died, I inherited her gifts. The neutrality only activates when someone else in the family in that line with the mark dies. Oh, I'm sorry, Sage. Josh knew how painful it was to talk about Miranda, and the wound was still so fresh. Yeah. Sage took a moment to get a handle on her emotions. So this whole job is kind of like a family line thing. I was literally born for this. You were. There's no denying that. Matt dropped his eyes and sighed. But I don't have to like it. And if you haven't already guessed, she said, keeping her focus on Josh, I'm not supposed to be telling people my secrets. Josh leaned back against the couch and nodded gently, not saying anything. His eyes shifted back and forth between Matt and Sage. Don't be too mad at Matt. He only just found out last week when you were away. Sage gulped down the knot in her throat. She understood his apprehension, appreciated it even. But one mother hen was enough. Telling Josh ensured she'd never have a moment's peace. He'd seen too much, and rather than lie about my partner or the battle scars, I had told him the truth and swore him to secrecy. And you said nothing interesting happened, Josh glared at his boyfriend. Battle scars? Sage's hand flew to her neck. The wounds had healed, thank goodness. But faint silvery scars remained. It's a full contact type job sometimes. If Matt rolled his eyes any harder, they'd pop straight out from his head. Sometimes. Do you see any wounds today? Sage snapped at him. She heals insanely fast, Matt whispered in Josh's ear. Then what are you two so worried about? Josh asked. She's like a sister to me. Of course I worry. I was born for this. Sage felt like a broken record, having to keep repeating it. A.S.S.E.T is the agency my mom worked for. All the people with this mark work there to protect people and magic. It's not what I expected. Josh's voice stayed shockingly quiet. Would you rather we were running off into the sunset together? Matt reached down and took Josh's hand, giving it a little squeeze of solidarity. Neither of them looked happy, having their eyes open to the strange reality that they'd been blissfully ignorant to. I feel like this is a practical joke, but no one's smiling. Josh's jaw tightened, teeth clenching as if trying to keep his chin from dropping to the ground. She couldn't blame him. I said the same thing when Gray, my new partner, showed up on the front porch trying to get me to believe all this nonsense too. She snickered, remembering how angry Gray had gotten when she asked if she could fly. Truth is weird, but it's no less truth, she added. And now that you know, I have to swear you to secrecy, like your boyfriend over here. You can't tell anyone about this, okay? Who would believe me? Josh shook his head slowly. You'd be surprised, Sage answered back. I kind of wish I hadn't asked now. Now you know why I've been so bothered? Matt had to throw his own 2 cents in, of course. Here's the thing, boys. Sage couldn't believe she had to be the authority in this conversation. This is who I am. This is what I do. And the best way you can support me is to trust that I'm capable of handling this. But yesterday you were on the fence. Matt sounded as if you were trying to convince her not to take the job again. Not about whether or not I could handle it. I know I can. I have Devin teaching me how to protect myself. I have Gray. He might be an ass, but he's a seasoned agent who has my back. And I didn't doubt for a minute that I could do the job. What I wavered on was whether I wanted to. You could have said no, Matt pouted. She hadn't expected him to go full-on diva over this. He'd seemed so level-headed about it the night before. If only he'd been honest, they could have worked through these fears together. But now it was too late. The die had been cast. Sure, I could have. She reached up, her hand finding the necklace, as if drawn like a magnet. But I realized that what I want is selfish. I owe it to my mother and to everyone else who bears this mark. To do my duty for the greater good. No more Avengers movies for you. Josh cracked the first smile she'd seen all evening. With great power comes... Don't, Matt interrupted. I could give you the whole "this is my destiny" speech. That's what everyone told me when I freaked out at my first troll sighting. She drew a finger around her birthmark. The truth was, it was right there, plain as day. And as much as they needed to hear it, Sage needed to say the words out loud. My kind were born with a gift. My mom had it and used it to help protect those around her. How could I not do the same? You met a troll? Josh gasped. Of all she just said, that's what he heard? Yeah, my old boss. Apparently they're expert number crunchers. That's all they crunch, right? Matt asked. Yes, as far as she knew. The glamour was really their only magical trait. Think about it. If trolls were working with humans, do you really think they could get away with eating them? And that guy, Gray? Josh hadn't had the chance to meet him. He's like me. And he's one of the best agents at A.S.S.E.T, she assured him. What about that other guy you mentioned before? Zack? Matt asked. Guys, seriously, relax. I work with good people. I'm not in any more danger than I would be walking to the bus stop at night. You need a car, Matt huffed. I don't like you, magical protection or not, wandering the streets at night. Sage let go a relieved breath, seeing his return to at least a normal level of concern for her safety, though Josh still looked as if he wanted to devour his bottom lip. Hey, I gotta pay off my student loans first. Sage countered with the same argument that she'd given everyone else. But if I ever need a ride, I'm calling you first, okay? I don't really understand all of this, Josh motioned with his hands. But for argument's sake, I'll believe you. Protect magic or whatever. Sounds like you're really interesting work. But like Matt, I worry about your safety, your family, blood or not. And I love you and Matt both for that. So how about we compromise? I'm listening, Josh said. If things are getting real at work, I'll let you know. I won't keep secrets from you. Okay, but Matt started to protest. But you boys have to trust that I'm not some fragile little thing. I can handle my shit. And quit worrying all the time, Sage demanded. I'll tell you when it's time to worry. Matt narrowed his eyes, his jaw set tight. But after a nudge from Josh, he muttered, Fine. If a moment comes where I tell you that shit's getting real, she locked eyes with each of them in turn as she delivered her decree. You must also promise to listen and do exactly as I say. Matt nodded. I can agree to your terms. Josh held a hand out. As long as we have your word, no more secrets. If you guys can stop being helicopter boyfriends, yes. Sage shook Josh's hand. She'd tell them what she needed for them to know, enough to keep them from feeling left out of the loop. But in no way in hell was she telling them all the crazy that went on in her daily life now. She had enough on her plate with the Djinn neighbor to check up on and the missing Gemini twins that she and Gray had been assigned to find. And that's the end of Chapter 8. Next week. Oh, yeah, we've got some fun coming up next week. I love doing this. I say it every week, but it's so true. I really, really, really enjoy being able to read and share this with you guys. So thank you guys who are out there watching. Let's check in with the comments and see who is visiting today. We got Regine early. Yes. I like it. You're in a weird mood because not hungover from Spilling. So we didn't have a show this week for those of you who also watch my other channel, Spilling Ink. And the reason is because, one, congratulations are in order to our guest, whose wife just had a baby. So that was a very, very good excuse not to be on the show that night. But on the flip side, we also have a host out who is having complications due to COVID. So we're all sending Jay positive vibes so that they feel better and can return to the show soon. So yeah, we didn't have an episode of Spilling Ink this week, and I miss that. I enjoy that hour as well. So hopefully by next week, we'll be right back at it. Turning 27 is a big milestone. Man, I wish. I'm celebrating the 20th anniversary of my 20th birthday. I'll let you figure that one out. Hey, Rebecca, how we doing? Thanks for watching. I love this scene so much. Which one? The Zack scene where they're quoting bastard princess bride lines. I love when I can get the two of them to speak to each other in Princess Bride type quotes, and especially when Gray's around, because Gray has no clue what they're saying, and he's never seen the movie before, so he's just kind of like, what the hell are you doing? Although I also love the dynamic. You know, you met Matt last time, and now you get to meet Josh, who is the more parental minded of the two. You know, Matt's the more fun loving, and Josh is the balance. He's the more responsible. And together they are her surrogate boyfriends. They are her surrogate brothers. She thinks of them like family, and they think of her like family. So it was nice to have that little, you know, family time of them really showing how much they care for Sage, and her struggling with what she can tell them for their safety. So I know it was a little bit slower of a scene, but I thought that it really needed to play out. That's that side story that we need to see the characters developing and showing their relationships, and that's what that chapter was all about. These two chapters were great. Good. I'm glad we did run a little bit long. I don't know what that is. You'll have to explain that to me. Oh, we have a new visitor. Hello, Tammy. Thank you for watching. If you missed any of our other chapter reads, everything from book 1 is up and available on the channel, and I will continue to do this as long as you guys continue to watch it. So I enjoy it. I really love being able to share this with you every week. I look forward to it. So seeing you guys in the comment section, that just keeps the motivation going. So thank you. Thank you for watching, hanging out with us. Zack and Gray getting into it. Oh, those two. Those two always have fun with each other. I have a fantasy about the jerks fighting each other. Which book are we in? Oh, I can't give any secrets away. I won't do it. All right, guys. Like I said before, I don't want to make these too long so I don't steal too much of your day, but I do appreciate you guys sharing your time with me. And I will be back next week with some more fun chapters. We're going to be meeting some more creatures. As I said earlier, this book is filled with creatures, and Sage's responses to meeting creatures is hilarious. And there is a really, really funny scene I can't wait to get to. But we'll have to wait until next week. So I love you guys. Take care of yourselves. Make sure you take some time for self-care this week. Treat yourself. You are important, and you can't treat others unless you treat yourself. So take your time, and I will see you next week with more chapters. Thanks for watching, guys.